So this meeting is in the context of one of the working groups of the Barcelona Declaration, the working group on sustaining infrastructures. And this is really about one of the specific commitments of the declaration, the commitment of that asks of research organizations and research funders to support the sustainability of infrastructures for open research information. And it was felt when we had the prioritization discussion at the Paris conference last year that this was an important area and important enough to have a working group on. And just to remind people, the idea of the working groups is as a place where signatories and supporting organizations can work together to make it easier for individual organizations to take steps towards that. So what can be done together that makes it easier for individual universities to indeed start supporting infrastructures for open research information. So that's where the working group started. And then within the working group, we had a lot of discussions. As I said, the main aim is to see how we can help Barcelona's declaration signatories in supporting infrastructures. But this is, of course, not a new question. And the fact that we have here 3 initiatives that are also working on that points to both the urgency of these questions and the large amount of work that's already been done in this space. So we wanted to take stock of that, also to inform all the working group participants, increase the awareness and bring everyone to the same level in terms of knowing what's already happening. And then also have that help our discussion in the working group, where our working group can have the most added value. We don't want to do the same things that are already happening. We really want to see where can we have added value? Where can we do something that's helpful in addition to what's already happening? And it could either be targeting efforts really specifically to open research information infrastructures among other open scholarly infrastructures, maybe targeting outreach and targeting actions to specifically Barcelona Declaration signatories. One thing is if we're also encouraging people to move away from closed data sources, so maybe canceling Web of Science and Scopus, the idea is that that could free up money that could then be reinvested. So that could be one area. So that redirecting financial support, which is actually the third bullet on the screen. So those are some of the ideas we're thinking of, but we really want to make those decisions in the context of the wider ecosystem of initiatives. So that's why we're organizing these meetings. This is actually the second of 2 meetings that we're having. For the first meeting, we invited 3 infrastructures to talk about their sustainability approaches and challenges. And we had OpenAlex, OpenAir, and Open Citations present here. Chiara, who's also here, presented for Open Citations. And that was a really useful discussion, also a very open discussion, really both highlighting shared challenges, but also very different approaches to sustainability models and the challenges that come with that. So that was already very informative. And for this meeting, we invited what we call related initiatives that are also focused on supporting sustainability, to learn more about your approaches and then to use that in our thinking of what we can do. As Barbara already said, it's essentially a working group meeting, but we also invited, except from the participants of working group 5, we also invited 2 other working groups. One of them on replacing closed systems, because that also deals with the question, okay, replacing with what? So what choices are being made? And also working group 6 on evaluating sources of open research information, because that working group is also thinking about criteria. And as I know well, all 3 of the initiative represented here are also doing that work on thinking about criteria and what that could look like. So that could also be informative to learn from each other. We asked our presenters today to, of course, tell us a little bit more about their initiative, but also to address 4 specific questions that we think are specifically helpful in this discussion that we want to have. And I just put them on the screen here. How does your initiative define long-term sustainability? How does the initiative support long-term sustainability? whether there are different approaches for different types of open infrastructures, any specific considerations, and also in what ways could Working Group 5 and the Barcelona Declaration community facilitate this same agenda? Either through alignment, advocacy, coordination, specific actions. We would like to have an open discussion and also very much hear your input on that. So with that, I think that's should be long enough for just setting the scene. And I think that sets us up to have the first presentation, for which we invited to invest in open infrastructure. And I would like to give the floor to Katherine and Sarah to tell us more.
And I am so pleased to be here with you guys today. We're really excited to think with you about how the work you're doing in Working Group 5, but also in 4 and 6, relates to and can provide hopefully some reciprocal reinforcement for the work that each of our programs, SCOSS and SOSI and IOI, are doing. I'll start by just saying that for me, long-term sustainability has been a long-term problem and something that I've thought about throughout my career, of course. And some of that was motivated by starting with digital preservation as one of my big areas of focus. So I had to think about long-term sustainability, not in terms of like 5, 10, 15 years or normal kind of business life spans, but instead really thinking about it for posterity. Um, for me, and I think Sarah will address this as well, long-term sustainability means alignment and coordination above all else when we're talking about open infrastructures. It means that the resources and the adoption that we do has to be well coordinated enough so that the resources are positioned to really support the set of what we call infrastructures or open infrastructures through their lifespans. So with that, I'll tell you a little bit about IOI itself and who we are, what we do. And throughout this presentation, Sarah and I will try to relate back to the prompts that we were asked to respond to about the long-term sustainability of open infrastructures, including how we're trying to support that long-term outlook and our thoughts about the different types of approaches that different OIs might or open infrastructures might require, distinct but related approaches. So at IRY, our ultimate goal is really to increase the investment in and adoption of open infrastructures. We see scale and funding as two of the biggest barriers to the success of an open and thriving research ecosystem. And those two elements, the investment in and the adoption of, are what IOI's work ultimately seeks to change. Advance it. So I suspect everybody here is pretty knowledgeable about what we mean when we say open infrastructure, but I also suspect that everyone here knows that this term means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So for invest in open infrastructure, open implies a willingness and a readiness to be discovered, to be accessed, to be identified, integrated, reused. When we say infrastructure, we're referring to the underlying systems, the tools and instruments, the protocols, the platforms, and the networks that a community relies on. And we really use the term as a way to reference the maturing open tools and open standards and open platforms and open networks that are all in use today. And we're focused specifically on the digital infrastructure that the academic and research ecosystem needs in order to perform its functions throughout the research life cycle. Whoops, too far. So in terms of who we are, we started about 6 years ago through a painstaking set of work undertaken by about 20 people, some of whom are here today, including me. And what we did was we came together biweekly for about a year to found the organization, Invest in Open Infrastructure, and to establish its initial mission and vision. And so you'll no doubt see some familiar names here. It's worth noting that from the start, this was intended to be a multinational endeavor, that ambitions were to grow globally in terms of who we are and what we do. And as this group, which I am proud to have been a part of when I was still executive director at Educopia, When our group finished that kind of founding process work and landed the first funding to enable the hiring of an executive director, Caitlin Thaney, who many of you know, and a small research team, we did something that may be unique among academic and research nonprofit environments, which is that we explicitly sunset our founding governance group, knowing that 20 voices were too many to help this organization really take the concrete form and focus that it needed to. So our current governance group, which is 11 people rather than this 20-person list, includes representatives from all of our major stakeholder groups, the open research infrastructures, national research and education networks, or NRENs and RNs too, knowledge technologies, libraries, universities, research labs, and publishers from the US, Canada, Africa, and Latin America. And in terms of who we are as a staff, we're a close-knit team that similarly represents different sectors as well as different stakeholders. So our staff, and this is really important, it's a distinguishing element of our work. Our staff have worked in a really wide range of environments, including knowledge technology beyond the academic sector, like Mozilla and Wikimedia, the New York Times, GitHub, the publishing industry, including both commercial and non-commercial publishers, so Hindawi, Wiley, Nature, open infrastructures like Dryad and Archive and Library Publishing Coalition and eLife, libraries, so you'll see Cornell on there and University of Pittsburgh, but also Delft is on there as well. Third-party coding and hosting companies, so Atmeyer, who of course works with For Science, and then also NREN and RREN and government spaces, including some public-private partnerships like 2Scale and Amani. Sorry, toggling too many browsers. And our stakeholders, I already kind of foreshadowed this. We work with a deliberately wide set of stakeholders, all of whom we think matter for scaling up adoption and increasing active investment in open infrastructure. And that brings me to my last slide, and then I'll hand off to Sarah. In terms of what we do a lot, as only a small, flexible, multinational and diverse team can, and we're all from those kinds of teams. So I know that this is a kind of shared sense of consternation, I think, in a lot of the nonprofit and research groups that are working in this space, that we have to do a lot. So Sarah's going to take us into some deep examples of each of our 3 core programs. I'm just giving you a meta view on this slide. The first of those is a research and data analysis pillar, and we call it our data room. It's really a kind of pillar that we use in our work to define those spaces where we're building collections of information that we hope can help to, again, advance the adoption of and the funding for open infrastructures. The second pillar, which you see in the middle, we refer to as strategic support. That's just our consulting work, and it's a big part of our own financial diversification. So we work with a range of groups to help them with their governance, with their fiscal planning, and with all kinds of practical business work that they are engaged in. And then finally, the funding pilots piece really should not just say pilots anymore. It's a growing funding pillar that delivers resources to a broad range of users and builders of open infrastructures, and especially we're focused on Latin America and Africa there. So in each of these, we work directly on long-term sustainability issues for open infrastructures. Again, broken record, seeking to increase adoption and increase investment in the frameworks that we all need for open knowledge to flourish. So there, I'm going to hand off to Sarah.
Thanks, Katherine. I'm Sarah Lippincott, a senior researcher at IOI, and I'm going to give you a closer look at some examples of our work in each of the core program areas that Katherine mentioned, and relate them back to how these efforts contribute to long-term sustainability. One of our flagship initiatives at IOI is InfraFinder, an open online tool that helps people discover and evaluate open infrastructure. I know that many of the people in this virtual room know InfraFinder because you're in InfraFinder, or your organizations are in InfraFinder. But for those who don't know, InfraFinder offers a common hub where open solutions can share key details about their technology, their governance and business models, their community engagement activities, and other policies and practices that are relevant to potential stakeholders. It allows potential adopters, funders, and collaborators to find extensive, up-to-date information and explore and compare open solutions in one place. By making this information easier to find and understand, InfraFinder helps increase the visibility and credibility of open infrastructures, encourages informed adoption and investment, and promotes transparency as a core sustainability principle. The tool highlights important factors such as governance, the availability of source code, data privacy commitments, and responsible business models that support the health and resilience of the entire open ecosystem and kind of represent the kinds of practices that we believe we should encourage in our open infrastructures. And by highlighting those features, we hope we're encouraging organizations to choose the tools and to build tools that are responsible, trustworthy, and built to last. Across our other programs, we're applying the same kinds of principles, making it easier for people to understand, invest in, and collaborate around open infrastructure. Next slide, Katherine. So our State of Open Infrastructure report is another example of this. It's how we track the health of the open infrastructure ecosystem and give an outlook on its long-term sustainability. So each year we analyze how open infrastructures are funded, governed, and adopted, bringing together perspectives from that are relevant to funding organizations, institutions, and service providers. And we use that to identify where collaboration, innovation, and investment can make the biggest impact. Most importantly, we try to share strategic recommendations that help stakeholders make informed, sustainable choices that keep open infrastructure strong and resilient in the long term. Next slide. We also pay attention to the different strategies that might be needed to support different kinds of open infrastructure, to this question about whether different approaches may be needed in different contexts. Our recent report, Open Resilience Building Infrastructure Together, or ORBIT, highlights this approach. We interviewed leaders of US-based library consortia to understand how they're engaging with open infrastructure in an era where when academic libraries are facing existential threats. And we identified 5 high potential avenues for collective investment in open infrastructure, including hosting, building, sponsoring, training, and cultivating, that could transform how libraries support open at scale. We found that each of these approaches may suit different types of open infrastructure projects. For example, building open infrastructure makes sense when there's a lack of options or where market consolidation has created pressure on certain spaces. And sponsoring works well when existing third-party infrastructure is already serving community needs and can be bolstered by community investment. Through this research, we're not just observing the ecosystem, we're also helping to shape it. So the insights from our data room projects feed directly into our strategic support work, where we turn evidence into action and we tailor those field level observations into organization level planning. So these are just a few examples of some of our strategic support projects where we've helped organizations like Archive review and refine their governance and financial model, through the Catalyst project supporting the development of governance and sustainability plan. And so together these projects kind of represent how we connect the dots, taking what we learned from our landscape research and applying it directly to open infrastructures to build stability and plan to thrive over time. Next slide. Finally, in February, we were really pleased to announce the launch of the IOI Fund for Network Adoption with an initial $2.7 million commitment from our founding sponsors. The IOI Fund will provide multi-year, dynamic, flexible capital, that is funding, and as well as strategic support from the IOI team to help networks implement, upgrade, and scale their use of open infrastructure to ultimately enable open and equitable sharing of data and content at scale. Next slide.
Sarah, you have only 2 minutes more.
Okay, great. I'm wrapping up. The fund has now reached over 4.5 million in total commitments. That's 75% of our initial target from the diverse group of funders shown on this slide. So these the examples that I've gone over here illustrate IOI's holistic approach to building a sustainable open ecosystem. Tools like InfraFinder, our landscape research, strategic consulting, and direct funding via the IOI Fund are helping the community to make informed choices, to invest wisely in open solutions. And by connecting our landscape research, our data-driven insights with hands-on support, we're equipping open infrastructures with the resources and the guidance that they need to thrive for the long term. And I'd say that's an ecosystem that is equitable, resilient, built to last is how I would define long-term sustainability from our perspective. And so I'll look forward to talking with the group about your ideas for how we can collaborate. I'd say as a baseline, we hope that you'll share these resources with your networks and promote them. I'll look forward to the conversation, the discussion.
Our next speaker will be Rosalie from SCOSS. So Rosalie, the floor is yours.
So I am Rosalie Lack. I'm the coordinator of SCOSS, and I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for the invite, and I really appreciated hearing the overview of what IOI's been working on. Always so impressive. I love that. Thank you. Yeah, again, probably many of you may be familiar in some way with SCOSS. So I'm going to do kind of an overview of the organization, and then my slides are a little differently. I actually went through and answered the 4 questions at the end a little differently. So variety, spice of life. So we'll see how that we go with this. So SCOSS is, our aim is to help sustain vital, non-commercial open infrastructure that supports the implementation of open science. So just to highlight, there's a lot of keywords in there that are super important. Vital infrastructure, we have a selection process, which I'll talk about, where we're talking about infrastructure that's vital and deemed essential. We focus on non-commercial and open infrastructure as nice definitions we heard recently. And that supports the implementation of open science. And this is really important. The idea is that open science is built on open infrastructure. It's great to have the open of the content, but the infrastructure obviously also, we believe strongly, has to also be open. So, and who we are, SCOSS is housed under Spark Europe, but it is a global organization, and we have representatives on our board and our governance globally, from Middle East to Africa, South America, Europe, and also the US, of course, because I'm from the US. Wonderful. So what do we do? So I'm going to just take a moment to explain our model. So basically, we endorse infrastructures for investment, and then we facilitate support of those infrastructures and broadly. So the idea is that we put out a call for infrastructures who are interested in becoming SCOSS endorsed infrastructures. And then those infrastructures go through a pretty rigorous vetting process where we're looking at them kind of in a 360 review. We're looking at their governance, their strategic planning, their technical infrastructure. Do they have a global reach? Are they cross-disciplinary? So we're looking at all these elements, and then we choose 2 to 4 infrastructures that will then become a part of this, what we call the SCOSS family of infrastructures. And those infrastructures have been what we're calling essential infrastructures, and they become a part of the SCOSS family. And we support those infrastructures in a number of ways. One is we help them to find funding, the most important thing we help them do. So the idea and the way that model works is that we don't take in or give out funding, but rather what we do is facilitate the relationship between those who might fund the consortia, primarily library consortia, but also individual institutions and research funders. We put them in touch with the infrastructures, and then we encourage that relationship between the 2 of them, with the idea that this is our concept of sustainability, that we are not in the middle of it, that relationship goes directly, and then over time that relationship will continue without the SCOSS intervention, because the relationship has been built and will continue long term. And we also support the infrastructures always through different family activities, where we have different working groups working on projects that the family identifies are important, that across family collaboration can happen on different capacity building. Or, for example, we did a project on TSOSI compliance across the infrastructures. And we also have a communications group that shares best practices, so that there's a kind of a capacity building aspect also. So to give an idea about the SCOSS family, right now it is 19 infrastructures strong, and it crosses over in publishing, from publishing, repositories, journals, books, data sets, software, also metadata for discovery. And there's also a broad geographical reach for the infrastructures that are SCOSS endorsed, so from North and South America, Africa, and Europe currently. So this graphic kind of just shows the breadth, depth of the SCOSS endorsed infrastructures. So that's really my contact info. I got the short and sweet version today. So I'm just going to move right into, but I welcome any questions or more in-depth information about SCOSS, certainly. But I'm moving right on to the questions that were posed. So the first one was, how does your initiative define long-term sustainability? So for us at SCOSS, we think of it as ensuring that this infrastructure has a reliable and diversified stream of funding, that these two work hand in hand, but also that there is sustainability that's really beyond financial sustainability, that there's also strong governance and strong global community engagement. As far as, for example, with governance, we're looking at active and engaged board members, for example, so that there's this financial side to sustainability, but also a governance and global engagement side to it. And then another thought that in creating these, we had sort of a group discussion about it. We were thinking about how, of course, libraries, universities, I think it's something Katherine mentioned at the beginning, which I really appreciated, that we talk about your work with digital preservation. We're not thinking about saving it for tomorrow. We're thinking about saving it for like centuries. And so that kind of long view is one that libraries and universities take very seriously. And this idea of planning the infrastructures in such a way that, for example, the metadata standards or the preservation needs are able to be repurposed because of open standards and open access to meet this kind of really long view, long game vision that libraries and universities have, and that I think the open infrastructures also share this view. If for some reason that infrastructure is no longer around, you can still recreate and repurpose the data and the information that they're, and the knowledge that they are providing access to. So on the second question, how does our initiative support long-term sustainability? So within SCOSS, that's one way to summarize it, is normalizing funding open infrastructure. So our big mission, vision, goal is that we should work toward changing the funding model. So that the way that, I mean, there's many funding models and all are needed. Funding is funding. So this is one version of our idea, is that we're looking to change the culture, that the funding for open infrastructure isn't a one-off funding. It becomes a way that we kind of a business as usual. This is how we work as libraries and universities and those who might be using these infrastructures, that you're funding them on an ongoing basis, not as a one-off short-term support or project-based funding only, but funding ongoing operations, and that just becomes the norm. And one way that we're trying to make this reality is through with the SCOSS funding model, is that we bring on infrastructures, and we have a sort of a initial 3-year in fundraising cycle with each of the infrastructures. But the idea is that relationship, as I mentioned earlier, that are built between the consortia or the funders and the infrastructure, that relationship will continue beyond the 3 years and longer term. So that's this model of how to build these initial relationships between the funders and the infrastructures that continue long term. And again, just summarizes normalizing or mainstreaming funding of open infrastructure. And wait, I can't actually read the top of my slide, but you all know the question. Do different types of open infrastructure require different distinct approaches? And yes, and some of just what we've seen in our experience is that what we find is this justifying of value, which becomes complicated, that we've really seen that when working with stakeholders, that we've seen that services that kind of resemble collections or knowledge base, such as archive or DOAB, are more familiar and are more easily can tell their story more easily and can be grasped and more straightforward to explain. Thus, we're finding more easily to be funded. And others that maybe are more technical or more abstract require more of a communication to help to make the case, although they are equally as indispensable to the research ecosystem. There's more of a struggle to show that value and direct, as I said, direct everyday impact value. So that's just one example that we were in our discussions thinking about. But I do have an asterisk there that says that even those that are long-term, the archives or the DOABs, still the challenge remains of how to change the behavior, that these need ongoing funding. And it's not just a one-time, one-off situation. And oh yeah, and so also just this additional slide just to show in trying to tackle this issue of how there's distinct and different approaches. We've just been trying different things here. And one, for example, at SCOSS, we have traditionally looked at our infrastructures. They come in different rounds. We're in round 6 right now. And we realized one day that maybe round 6 only means something to SCOSS. It might not, in fact, mean anything to anyone outside of SCOSS. So we're looking at other ways of how to organize the SCOSS, the 19 infrastructures, in some logical way that could resonate with folks. So we have come up with a new system around themes, as you can see them just here. We're about to just launch just a new website that shows these, but for example, around Diamond OA, or all the SCOSS infrastructures that are directories, or all those that are working in open monographs. So organizing them by themes is another way to just kind of have people understand how these fit in. And maybe, you might see an institution that says, okay, our priority this year is to fund Diamond. So now you can just go to this, and see which of the SCOSS infrastructures are focused on Diamond OA, for example. And another strategy we're thinking about is how to show the interconnectedness of the open ecosystem, and not interconnected for its own sake, but to really support the entire research life cycle. We certainly see this, I don't know if confusion is the right word, I don't know, but this proliferation, there's a lot of infrastructures, and how do they all fit in and how are they important? And so trying to show that there isn't redundancy, it's a complex system with different infrastructures having a role along that life cycle, and trying to show how they're interconnected and how those work together and aren't duplicating effort, but rather supporting each other. So kind of telling that story has been something we've been thinking about in our communications recently. And then finally, some ideas of how we might, how the working group and the community might work on projects together. So just again, some ideas to just throw out there to think about that we're thinking about is, what about something like a unified message? Like is there some way to clearly be able to articulate why this matters and what are the risks without it? I think at one point when I first started at SCOSS, we wrote a post that was like, imagine the world without open infrastructure. We're trying to just scare you a little bit, but maybe that's not the best strategy. We'll see. But so it's different ways to come up with sort of a unified message that we can be sharing. And then another idea maybe is there a way in this complex, diverse world to come up with any kind of sort of shared indicators that could, or metrics to assess the value of infrastructures, to demonstrate their value and impact? I get a certain amount of questions, not so much return on investment, but that concept. Like if I, in these tight budget times, why would I support this and not that? And is there any way that we could do some research and come up with something that can help to give people the information to help them make decisions on the value and impact of an infrastructure? So that's a research project, I think, ready to be done. And then again, thinking about, could we consider that, so the SCOSS family now as having 19 infrastructures in this group, is there an opportunity to kind of have the SCOSS family as like a laboratory for demonstrating real world impact on an idea or a thought or a research question? Could there be something there to work on? And then I couldn't pass up something on AI, of course. So is there something around AI, a project somewhere to be explored in this space? So yeah, that's the end of the questions. So I guess I'll stop sharing at this point.
So now we have TSOSI presenting.
Thank you, Baba. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm Maxence Larrieu. I'm the project leader of TSOSI. I work in France at Grenoble-Alpes University, who is a project leader of TSOSI. I have some context, some elements here, and I'm sure you all know this. And SCOSS has been launched in 2017, and I think it started with a report. So as you can see, TSOSI is really new. The project started last September, not last 2024. And we have a web platform, and the beta version was released, first version was released last June 2025. So TSOSI is really, really new, and it's a pleasure to be here with SCOSS and with Invest in Open to talk about sustainability. Yes, it's the time to say that SCOSS is only focused about financial sustainability. It has been said that sustainability is more than funding, and here, as we will see, TSOSI focus only on financial sustainability. Let me one moment to remove on the user interface of Zoom. Okay, no. So what is TSOSI? It's a data platform. We disseminate data that represent financial support. And it's designed to make visible which organizations have financially supported which open infrastructures. By making the supports visible, the financial supports visible, we strive to make them the norm, as Rosalie said. So our very goal is to make financial support to open infrastructures a norm. And what TSOSI do is that it shows the open science funding landscape on one of our punchline motto. It should be as evident to pay for Wally as it is to support DOJ, for example. Of course, you can change this to another open infrastructure. So how can we contribute to the sustainability? By making visible the open science funding network. I will come back to this later, but near the 2020, it was known that infrastructures were invisible and now we are in 2025, 2026. And what TSOSI want is to put the support made to open infrastructures visible so that everyone can see and explore the open science funding network. So far, once again, it's really new. The platform was just been realized last June 2025. So we have 140 organizations that have financially contributed to. So these are the infrastructures that are included in TSOSI. So please go on TSOSI.org and you will see on the homepage this world map. And here, each point represents an institution that have financially supported one or many of these infrastructures. And if you click on this point, you can redirect to one institution and or infrastructure. So we already have some good volume of organization, even if it's still the beginning. I want you also to add some who are the visitors of TSOSI.org, since it's a web platform. So here is the world map, as you can see. It was amazing to see that I have more visitors from the United States and France for the moment. Only 50 is the difference. So as you can see, we have, it's interest worldwide, and we have some visitors from many countries. This is important. How TSOSI is governed. So we have a supervision group. Ouvrir la science, this is really important. This is a French committee for open science. The committee who coordinates the French national policy on open science. So it's the funder of TSOSI. And here, this is where I work. It's the university who led the project. We have an advisory board. So I'm glad to work with DOIJ, SCOSS, DOIJ, DOIB, and Operas, and we also have a user group. And it's time to say thanks to all these members, because we've been working for 1 year now, and thanks to them, we managed to make TSOSI.org online. So how does it work? What is important is that we are in beta version, because it's really new. And for this beta version, the data comes from infrastructure. So we receive data from infrastructure, it's spreadsheets most of the time, and we enrich it with identifiers. So regarding the good graph we've seen just before about the connection between infrastructure, TSOSI is connected to RAW, which is part of the SCOSS family, and also to Wikidata. And then we build the web application so that everyone can explore the open science funding network. But much more what we want is that everyone wants to support open infrastructures. As you know, we want to improve the financial sustainability of infrastructures. So this was an introduction about TSOSI. Feel free to visit TSOSI.org. It's really easy. And I want to put some slide about the sustainability. About the project itself. So it's important to know that we are in a project phase. So it's too soon to talk about sustainability for TSOSI. It's a really small team for the moment. We have 1.5 FTE. And the question arises about which is how to find a solution, but financial for TSOSI after the project phase. And this question, I have some element for this, which was asked how to contribute. So on a trivial aspect, how to contribute, basically you can subscribe to our newsletter. It's at the bottom page of TSOSI.org. It's the best way to keep in touch. And of course, this is the really beginning, and other infrastructures, open infrastructures are really welcome to join TSOSI. So feel free to contact us. We have worked with 5 infrastructures, and other, like the one from the SCOSS family, as I have said before, are really welcome to be part of this adventure. And I was thinking a little bit, so I have some slide here more about thinking. Just to answer, I think for years we have been working on convincing researchers share their articles, and it has worked. This is a snapshot from the French Open Science Monitoring, which show a percentage about open access publication. And we see it can grow. So yes, I think for 15, 20 years, we've been working on that, and it has worked. It's working. And my point is how to move from this. I saw that title presentation like yesterday, which is part of the Open Access Week, understanding and defining your choices for sharing your research results in an open science ecosystem. And my question is, okay, how can we move from this to something which is much more related to our topic? What about the choices for supporting open infrastructures? I would be really enjoyed to see that kind of title, but I still can see those titles. How can we move from this to this? And as said, yeah, in 2017, I think you all know the principle for open scholarly infrastructures. And during this principle, which have been, there is a new version, which is really recent. And in this principle, it has been said that infrastructures are invisible. And how can we move from that? And I've put also some word here, which are linking to the fact that they are invisible. Infrastructures are invisible, and so are the financial support they receive. And maybe you support these infrastructures if you have enough money, if there's still money in the budget. And here, institution, they acquire some content, etc. How can we move from that to this? Where basically institution at the many level have an open science policy about supporting infrastructures, where supports are visible, and where when a new support is done to an open infrastructure, the community is informed, and where we are aware on how to value the support that has been done. And about how to contribute, we need to reason on why it is vital to support open infrastructures. I think for us, it's quite evident, or we know why, but I still think we need to think about that and how to communicate on that. So I put a citation from Demi Verbeke, who is talking about making value-aligned investment. Yeah, the big point is how to be part. Maybe there is a current shift which will lead to supporting open infrastructure as a norm, as Rosalie has said, how to make this support really common to all the research stakeholders. So to synthesize, be part of SCOSS, you are very welcome. If you are working in an institution, and even if you are in an infrastructure, make your support visible. You don't have to wait for SCOSS. You can already create a web page where you say, okay, this is our funder, or these are the infrastructures that have support, the infrastructure that we have supported. And you can talk to this to your colleagues, just working on putting some reason about why we have been contributing to this infrastructure. Very highly here is to not stay hidden the support you have done, explain why it's vital, etc. And some news blog posts are really also very welcome. So about SCOSS, what is next? Yeah, the best way to stay informed is to subscribe to our newsletter. It's one per 2 months. And for the next year, for the end of the project phase, we work to include new infrastructures. So we are working with the archive, Open Policy Finder, and Efficiency, so that they can join TSOSI. We would like also to welcome institution, so that data could come from the institution directly. And therefore, we'll need this more in a technical way, but we will need to design a way to identify identical supports. And yes, feel free to give me your feedback about the platform and what we have designed so far, and we will prioritize and mix all of this. So yes, thank you for your listening, and feel free to ask any question.
Presentations were very clear. I also think they very nicely complement each other. So I would like to thank, first of all, the presenters for being here, for being also open about your initiatives, about collaborations, about the challenges. And also thanks for all the other participants for being here and taking all that knowledge in and contributing to the discussion. So thank you very much for your participation, and this will definitely be continued. And with that, I would like to close the meeting and wish you all a very good day.